got a bunch of AYAB stuff to do today, and none of it is like substantial enough to merit its own video, so we're doing a vloggy thing. AYAB is an open source project to retrofit vintage Brother machines to be controlled by computer. I am a contributor, which means that I write code and I organize meetings and I fix bugs and stuff, and this is one of the things that I do as part of this project. I picked up a bunch of questionable AYAB interface control boards at the Evil Mad Scientist garage sale. There's a link to that video in the description, and I need to go through them and see if they actually work, because some of them might work, some of them might not. These were customer returns. I checked with the AYAB Development Discord, and it looks like we don't have a test plan for validating hardware, so I'm gonna make it up as I go. Some of y'all asked in the last video if I'd be willing to sell these, and the answer is no, for support reasons. These boards already had problems once. That's why they were returned, and while I'm going to test them and try to figure out what's wrong and find ones that are working, I can't guarantee that they're going to work for every machine in every situation, and we just don't have the bandwidth to do remote support like that right now. The plan for these is to keep a few and distribute to friends locally who I can help if they have problems, like I can show up at their door with a multimeter and figure out what's going on, and then distribute the rest to the AYAB development community. And I'm comfortable handing these off to engineers because I know that they will be able to debug and they will have reasonable expectations about what these boards are capable of. And I'm not going to sell them, I'm just going to ask for the cost of shipping because we're a fairly distributed group and it could get expensive pretty quickly. We're working on the next version of the hardware and trying to find a way to distribute fully assembled boards. If you want to know more about that, there are links to our Discord and the mailing list in the description. If you're comfortable soldering or know someone who is, you can get an Arduino shield on Etsy, and there's also a link in the description. So I'm going to go through all of these and come up with a test plan and see if they work or not, and then label them and distribute them and whatever else. And then I have a 930 that I borrowed from my friend, also at the garage sale. In the latest version of the software that we haven't released yet, there are alignment issues on the 930, so I'm going to set that up and try to debug those and like fix the constants. So come along with me on this day of debugging. Let's call it that, the day of debugging. Oh, and I also have a new camera setup that I want to test out in a low stakes way. This camera I bought right at the beginning of the pandemic, and I've been using it as a webcam, like way overpowered for a webcam. But for the first few years, my coworkers were all very impressed with the camera quality I got on video conferences. But I swapped it with my little vloggy cam because my little vloggy cam can only shoot in 4K for about 10 minutes before it overheats, and I want to be able to shoot longer, like, chunks of time on the machine. So we're trying this out in a low stakes way. I have it hooked up to an AC battery. It's not an actual battery, it's like a replacement for the battery that's over AC, and that noise from the AC can cause problems with audio. Not that the audio really matters on the overhead shots because I always turn it down anyway, but I want to test it out in a low stakes way, and I'm going to use it for this, and we're going to see how it goes. All right, let's get started. Okay, so I have maybe 24 boards here, and I got stuff in the way. Some of these have significant modifications. Like, this whole pile of resistors going here. Not sure why that happened. But some of the other boards have different chips attached to them, so I'm assuming... Let me find them. Yeah. So, like, this one has a custom chip attached to it, and this one just has a ton of resistors. So I'm assuming there was a bug in either the hardware that they chose for this or the design, and they fixed it with some custom hardware. So some of these are labeled, like some of them have green dots on them. Some of them have painter's tape that says things. Some of them have red dots. I think I'm gonna sort through and make a pile of the ones that look pristine and the ones that clearly aren't, and then test the ones that look pristine first. All right, I've got two piles of boards here. These ones over here have the old chips, and these ones here have the new custom chips, and I think these ones are probably the most likely to be in working order. Some of them have green dots in the back, some of them have red dots in the back. I don't know what the color coding system was at this point in time, but usually green means good and red means bad, so the ones with green dots I'm going to test first. Let me just quickly separate those out. You got a red dot, you got a red dot, you got no dots. You got a green dot at 930. But this has a post-it note that says 1 row over, so I'm guessing this one had alignment issues. But I'm still not testing it. So we got 2 with green dots that might work. And then 4 with red dots that probably don't. There's some terrible squeaking noise going on here. All right, and then these ones are all with the old chip. Some of them have green dots, so maybe they're working. Let's put those in a pile here. This one says OK reference. I don't know if this was an assembly reference or this was like a working board, but that's a maybe. This one's got a red dot, so it's probably a no. Red dot. We got a green dot, so that's probably a yes. We got missing Arduino and severely mangled board. I'm guessing they took an angle grinder to it to get the board off. So this one I'm not even going to bother to test because it doesn't have an Arduino attached to it. This one has a bunch of resistors soldered to it for some unknown reason. Not even going to hook this one up. I'm guessing this was prototyping for creating the custom chip that they're using here. I don't know if this one ever worked, but it's a little too sketchy for me, and I'm not going to risk burning my house down, so this goes in the don't even test pile. And then one more of these has had its chips removed, so this is also going in the don't even test pile. So from this sort, I have 4 that I assume will probably work based on their color coding system, and then 4 maybes with the new chips and 2 maybes with the old chips. There was a power supply in the box that I picked up from the Evil Mad Science garage sale. I'm gonna double check and make sure this is the right power supply for these boards. Their documentation is still online and accessible, so let me check that real quick. Oh boy, am I glad I checked. So this power supply is 12 volts out and 1.5 amps. The polarity is negative on the outside and positive on the inside. The power supply that I need for the Evil Mad Scientist boards is 9 volts out and 1.5 amps with the same polarity. So this would have fit into the boards, but might have caused problems. I have another power supply that is correct that I use for my other boards. I just need to pull it out and get it set up. My other power supply have fed through a hole in the side of the cabinet here, but I want to pull it out so that the part that plugs into the wall is more accessible in case there are any problems with any of these boards with shorts. I can quickly unplug things or put it through a surge protector. But it is plugged in to a power supply in that cabinet there, and it's run through all of this yarn here, and it's kind of a mess right now. The spring cleaning video is coming probably sooner rather than later given the situation, but we're not there yet, so I just gotta deal. What are you stuck on? Haha, freedom! And then I have a power strip over here. I'm hitting my head on the thing! Lights! Linker. We need to live somewhere else. And you didn't see any of that because it was out of stock. This is what I was doing. Camera up here. And then HDMI cord goes all the way down the side of my stand to a monitor down here that has peaking set up so that I can see what's in focus and what's not. At least while it's not filming, it doesn't output while it's filming, which is interesting. Anyway, I have my power supply moved over here. Need to unplug my other board. This is the board that I work with most of the time. This is actually based on the Evil Mad Scientist board, but it is produced and distributed by a guy in Germany. Is he in Germany or is he in Switzerland? Anyway, it's one individual, and I would love to advertise his wares, but the only way to get in touch with him is to join the machine knitting Facebook group and then ping him directly, which is not the best system, but I will try to link to him in the description. So if you want to buy one of these that is already assembled, you can. I have my own color coding system that I'm going to be using here. I have these labels from the last time I moved. Green means good, red means bad. And I'm gonna put the stickers over the branding because I need to find a way to cover that up anyway, and I know stickers aren't the best way, but it's a start, and at least I'll know which ones are mine and which ones came with the boards originally. And then I will label them which machine I tested them with. So this is the most pristine one that I have. It's got a green sticker on it already, so I'm gonna plug it in and hook it up and see how it goes. You're plugged in. And your Arduino is not powering up. Let me make sure my power supply is still good. Ah, there we go. My USB cable is not plugged in. That would be why it's not turning on. Arduino is powered up. And now I need to update my code to the latest version because I'm going to test these on the leading edge of AYAB. I'm not going to bother with the 9.5 release because these are getting distributed to developers and they will be developing on the bleeding edge and not touching 9.5 like regular consumers would. We're all set up now. I have the latest version of the software loaded on my desktop, and then I have flashed the board. That means I installed the latest firmware here, and I have a test pattern loaded up. And we're just going to see what happens. So, let's record some stuff. And remember where the record button is. Specifically to ask you to record. We're going to knit. Move it outside the turn mark. PC2. Select some needles in the middle. Oh, no, beeping. Beeping's a good sign. Nothing selected. Nothing selected. Nobody advancing. This board does not work. But I don't know why. And like you can kind of hear the mechanism moving under there, and the software was advancing through the rows, so it's getting signals about where it is on the bed. I'm gonna double check that I have installed this correctly. It appears to be installed correctly. It is not working. Time to try the next board. And this one gets a red dot because it is not working. And then I will mark that 910. This board does not work on a 910. This one was labeled with one row over, which I assume means there are alignment issues. Nope. Okay. So I did this wrong. In the latest version of the for the 1.0, so in the transition from the 9.5 release to the 1.0 release, we unified the code base. So before we had to build different binaries for different kinds of machines, and now they're all built in the same binary. So to tell it which machine that you want to use, you need to specify it in the UI. And I had the 270 specified in the UI because that was the last thing I was working on. So now I have it switched to the 910. So now I don't know if this board's working. All right, we're gonna try the one that I have hooked up now because it's there, and I'll go back and hook the other one up again. Why don't we have any beeping? That's not a good sign. That's also not a good sign. That is not the pattern that I loaded. Okay, so this is not the pattern that I loaded that it's trying to do here. I don't know what that is. That's probably just garbage stuck in a buffer somewhere from the failed attempt with the wrong board. So this one doesn't work either. It never actually picked it up on the software anyway. It should beep if it finds it. We got nothing. You got garbage stuck in a buffer. Okay, so I'm gonna say this is bad, and I'm labeling with these with stickers, so if I have to come back and fix these later, that's fine. That's fine. And I will put the sticky note back on it. This is the one that I was testing before. I'm gonna plug it back in. It hooked up. Restarting the software. Beeps are good sign. Ah, that is correct. We got one that works! Okay, so I can pull the red sticker off of this and put a green sticker on it. So we get one that works. I probably should put this through its paces and make sure that it works elsewhere, but initial validation says it's fine. I'm gonna do the rest of these off camera because this is gonna get really boring really quickly. I'll be back and let y'all know how it goes. I have worked through all of the boards and I have 4 that worked fine on the 910. I didn't put them through their paces, I just ran one test pattern. I need to go back and check these out some more, but that means I have a bunch that didn't work. These ones for sure don't work, and I tried to leave notes about what was wrong with them. A couple of them just didn't pass the turn mark. They wouldn't start the pattern. Some of them have missing needles or selecting extra needles, which is bad. And one of them is just writing garbage to the solenoids. So these are hardware issues. I'm confident calling them hardware issues because I've worked on the software and I know the software is in a decent state right now. Then I have this one that I labeled with yellow because it sometimes selects the wrong needles. Given that there are only 4 good boards, I think there's probably not enough to go through the process of distributing all of them. I might see if anybody in the community wants the bad boards, because otherwise I'm just going to like find a way to recycle them. And maybe somebody will get some use out of them or want them as decoration, because they are pretty cool. But I am now done with the 910, which means it's time to swap out for the 930, and I should film that process because there's not enough of that going around. There's too much crap. There's too much crap. I need to clean because, like, my friend is gonna come over to film. Well, I hope she's gonna come over to film. I'm gonna pitch her coming over to film so we can go through setup her 910 and get her started and like have that as a resource to share with all of y'all. But I need to like clean up so there's space for us to film and do that. But I'm got other stuff to do first. I'll get this sorted out. Ooh, well that's interesting. I just got the 930 set up on my machine knitting stand and ran a quick test, and with the 910 firmware selected, it's working correctly. Which makes me think that the offsets for the 930 need to be the same as the offsets for the 910, which doesn't make any sense. But I will switch it and see, and I'm gonna take a look through the code base and see what else is different between the 910 and the 930, because it's not just the offsets. I think it might also be some of the sensor values are different on the 930 than they are on the 910. It's weird. It's really weird. Okay, I actually went and looked at the bugs that are filed against the firmware, and it looks like only the garter carriage is having alignment issues on the 930, so I'm gonna pull mine out and get it up and running and see if I can fix that. It'll probably be exactly the same as what the 910 needs. And then there are 2 more bugs about incorrect needle selection. I will see if I can reproduce those and then maybe fix them. Yeah, shouldn't be too bad. That's weird. It was my understanding that the garter carriage that I have, which is the KG88, is supposed to be compatible with the 930, The 930 has rails on it already that the garter carriage is supposed to be able to walk across, but it's like it was really loose and it didn't want to walk. So I pulled out the 910 rails that I have that are like to retrofit the 910 to be compatible with the garter carriage, and now it's walking across fine. This is weird. I don't know why it's doing this. I'm checking with some friends to see if I've missed something about the compatibility, but it's in a state that I can test. I just need to get set up. And so with the rest of the carriages, you can test by eye and you don't need any yarn on the machine, but with the garter carriage, you really need yarn on the machine to see what's going on. So I'm gonna cast on and get set up and run some tests and try to fix these bugs. I got the garter carriage alignment issues fixed. It'll work now. And I just found out that the garter carriage that I have is not supposed to be compatible with this knitting machine, but I was able to get by putting down the center rail for the 910. All three rails don't fit because there's like there's a thingy that gets in the way. It's fine, it's fixed, but I need food now, so the rest of the bugs are gonna have to wait until tomorrow. It is a different day and my hair is not cooperating. Oh, so much fun. So I realized last night that my garter, so my garter carriage that I've been working with is not actually compatible with the 930. I have the KG88. I believe the KG89 is the one that's compatible with the 930. And there are alignment issues with the KG89 on the 930. And my fix for my hack to get the KG88 working on the 930 might not fix the problems with the KG89, but I don't know how much the design of the carriage changed between the 88 and the 89, so I'm just gonna leave it because it's only going to be wrong if the distance between the magnets on the back and the point that actually does the knitting is different on the 89. And I don't have one to test with right now, and it's gonna take a while to get one and do the whole cycle of testing it again and fixing it again, so I'm just gonna leave it in the code base and keep going. There are two more bugs that have been reported with the 930. One where the lace carriage is not selecting needles when it's supposed to, and one where the main carriage is selecting needles when it's not supposed to be. So I'm gonna see if I can reproduce those and then try to fix them. It's all fascinating and exciting. I'm doing this thing where I attempt to color correct stuff correctly. So this is my color correction card, and I'm gonna go in and post and try to make these colors actually work, and we're gonna see how that goes. Alright, let me break down the garter carriage and put it away because I don't need it anymore, and then get set up to test the other things. One extra needle is being selected on the very left edge of the bed when you have a 200 needle wide pattern, and it seems to only be happening when you're going really fast, which makes me think that it's like a timing issue because there are only, okay, so limitations of a knitting machine, limitations of a brother knitting machine, patterns were only 16 stitches wide. Well, for a few years patterns were only 16 stitches wide, and the way that the hardware is still done is that the patterns are only 16 stitches wide, and you like write to the buffer 16 bits of next pattern that need to be needle selected. So it's possible that there's like old crap stuck in the buffer that's not getting set correctly before the new needles show up in front of the carriage, but I need to, what? Needles are selected on the trailing edge. Oh. Okay, so it's happening more often right to left than it is left. I don't know my left from my right. It's happening more often left to right than it is right to left. So by that point, the trailing edge of the carriage is setting the needles. So by that point, the trailing edge of the carriage, so by that point, the magnet has passed the turn mark, and we should be initialized and set up and ready to go by the time that the trailing edge of the carriage hits that first needle and selects it. So either like there's an issue with the amount of slop on either side of the carriage, or like something in the turnaround. Oh, something in the turnaround for the... Okay, so when you have a pattern that is smaller than the full bed, there's a couple needles extra for the turnaround. So like we wait until the carriage is a couple needles past the end of your chunk of patterning before we say, okay, this line is done, let's get the next line ready. And it might not be possible for that many needles to show up because we read that based on how far the timing belt has moved. So it's possible that, okay, so when you get to the edge of the carriage, when you get to the edge of the bed, the carriage disengages with the timing belt because it hooks into the timing belt, but once it's on the edge of the bed, the timing belt only goes so far. So the carriage keeps moving, but the timing belt stays still and the hooks disengage. So it's possible that we're not reading that you're at the end of that row until like we realize that you're moving in the other direction again, and then it's like, okay, fetch me the next row, let's fix this. So I have a couple theories that I now need to test and look at the code and see what makes sense. I don't know what's actually causing this bug on the machine, and I could look at the code, but I don't think looking at the code is going to help me figure out what's going on, but I do have a couple theories, and what I can do is test those theories. And the easiest one to test is that something is going wrong with the turnaround distance, the turnaround buffer that we add to the end of a line. So what I can just do is reduce that. So the constants are defined here in encoders.h, and let me make this a little bigger. These are grouped. This is the 910, the 930, and then the 270 is last. So we can just cut these in half. This is offset on the left side, and this is offset on the right side, and I'm just going to cut them both in half because I struggle with left and right, and I don't want to mess it up and cause myself problems. And then I can just go down here and flash the board, but then, hold on, I have to plug that in. Okay, board is plugged in, and now I can build and upload. And my recording cut off, but now it's installed and I can test this. There are two settings to do color work on the 930. One of them is called KC1 and one of them is called KC2. And I'm just looking this up in the manual, and it looks like when you select KC1, that means it also selects ends needles. And you would want this when you're knitting Fair Isle for like a nicer selvage edge, because if your second color is always caught on the end, then you have consistent floats throughout the thing. And then KC2 does not select the end needles, it only selects the needles in the pattern. And this particular bug is only having problems with end needle selection on one side when you have the full bed of needles in work. But end needle selection, so the bug report says that it only happens on KC2, which is where end needle should not be selected. I wasn't able to reproduce it on KC2, I was only able to reproduce it on KC1. I'm going to try again with the original pattern that was having trouble and see if I can reproduce with KC2, which is the no end needle selection. But I suspect I won't be able to, and I might poke the reporter back and be like, hey, are you sure this was the carriage setting that you had? And then I can always swap back in the original hardware. Though I don't think I have the power supply for this machine. Yeah, I don't think so. More testing to be done. So I went back and tested again, and I cannot reproduce this at all. I was testing with the wrong carriage setting, and that's why I was getting weird end needle selection. So I left a note on the bug. The person that filed it was working on an older version of the software because, okay, so development has continued and we are fixing bugs, but right now we don't have the ability to build a Mac release build for testers because of some changes in infrastructure stuff that no one has been able to figure out yet, because it requires having an Apple Silicon Mac, and we have like one person who has one and has the time to work on it, and actually she doesn't have much time to work on it, and to get one, like my MacBook is a couple years old. It's an old Intel Mac, and it's time to replace it, but a new one is going to cost like $4 or $5 grand, and it's just not worth the time and effort to replace it yet, and I don't have an Apple Silicon Mac to test and fix the bug with the infrastructure, so this is where we are. I'm gonna look at the next bug now. The issue is that the lace carriage is not selecting needles in left to right and a certain chunk, like the first 8 needles of the bed. That'll be easy to test. This is also a bug filed against an older version of the software, so it might not still be an issue because we made some fixes to the way that stuff is done, so it might be better now. I'll just test it and see what happens. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on with the lace carriage and why the first few needles are always getting selected. And I'm looking through the code base, and so, okay, it's hard to debug this because there's a lot of information going back and forth across the serial bus all the time, so it's hard to like slip debugging messages into that. So I engage in what I like to call beeper debugging, where I set a condition and then I have the beeper beep. And what is actually happening is M pixel to set never goes below 8. So something is going wrong in the calculation of pixel to set, and it's only happening on passes from left to right. And I suspect it is this, because half of the number of solenoids is 8, and this offset is only for the lace carriage. And I suspect this would happen on the 910 as well. It's not just the 930. So gotta put some thought into why this is happening and how to prevent it from happening. It's fixed! Well, I figured out what was wrong with it. So we have this check here that's looking for if the position is... okay, so before I added my change, it checks the position if the position is greater than the start offset, which is like where you are on the timing belt when you are like right at the beginning of the needles. But because we do this half shift for the lace carriage, we need to start checking half shift earlier for the lace carriage. So I just subtracted this from the start offset, and it works now. All the needles are selected correctly in the right place, and we don't have that weird 8 needle chunk at the beginning. So I just need to make this a little prettier, and then we'll go from there. I was like really worried this was going to be a tricky one, but it wasn't that bad. And then I will mail these PRs. That's it. All done. Bugs are fixed. Well, I couldn't reproduce one bug. I could reproduce the other bug, and I have fixed it. And there's another bug about lace mispatterning on the 930, but that's going to require significantly more research and work to reproduce because I haven't been able to reproduce it at all while testing these other bugs. So I think I'm going to end this video here, and I will link to the PR in the description if you want to see how this turned out in the end. Let me know what you think of the technical side of machine knitting, or at least the open source software side of it. I don't really do the hardware, but I enjoy this part of it. Yeah, let me know if there's anything else that you want to see, anything else you want to know about the software or the development process, or like generic software engineering things. I can do that. I can make videos about that stuff. So thanks for watching. Happy knitting. I gotta put this all away now. Actually packing up a knitting machine is difficult. Just like tossing them on the ground is not, which is what I did with my knitting machine. Hold on. Can you even see that? Yeah, see, look. This one's mine. It's just kind of chilling here in the way. But the other one doesn't belong to me, so I feel the need to take care of it. Okay, goodbye.